Hi there, and a very warm welcome to this week's quick tip, in which we are going to learn about the output AOVs of Octane. So, as promised last week in the features video of Octane 2023, they have overhauled their AOV system, and we're going to take a look at it in Cinema 4D, as well as in the Standalone this time, because not all of the nodes have made it to the Cinema 4D release yet. So let's grab your coffee and let's keep going. This week's video has the potential to be a real quick tip, so not any longer than 15 minutes. But if I say that, usually it goes over 20. So let's see what timing we end up with. What you can see on the screen right now is the scene we are going to be using to discover the new internal compositing system of Octane 2023. So again, something more complex, and I think this scene is a real treat. Or as the Bavarians say, a Schmankerl. I built up the scene during last week, including last night, so I'm a bit sleep deprived. Hopefully you don't notice that. And actually, this scene can be yours if you subscribe to my Patreon, because I upload all the scene files I deal with within my tutorials. So maybe this is a good incentive to finally become a Patreon. Now, let's finally start exploring within Cinema 4D. Alrighty, let's look at the scene file. So a small disclaimer first, I overdid it with some of the materials again, so it needs quite a lot of time to load. Don't be afraid if when you click render, it takes 1 minute or so till it starts rendering. This scene also includes all the different things from the still to the animation. So if I go to the animation camera, we can scrub through the animation here that you've just seen. And probably you'll also ask yourself if the projection through the lens is real. Well, it's half real. Right now we are using a baked texture. So what we can do is go to the render caustics take. And then if we go to the GI clamp and set it to something higher as 250, and let's make a render region here, you can see this is the real thing coming from the lens here. And with the lens bake or the lamp bake here, I just baked that to a texture and then used that one for the emission that you can see when we go back to the still. So this one here is the emission of the original bake, so it's half fake basically. But enough of that, you came here to learn about AOVs, so let's go and look at AOVs. You probably already know that there's this post effect, and there is something linked to it with the new post effects. So if we go to post and then look at the chromatic aberration, the chromatic aberration is set to 0. You sort of get the old post effect where this is just the bloom, the glare power, and in the new case, the lens flares. But if I set my chromatic aberration to something else than 0, suddenly we see the whole scene because the chromatic aberration cannot be separated from the scene in the way that a glow or a lens flare can. So this is also important to know. Welcome to our layout changed Cinema 4D. So what I have here is the touch shading preset that offers us a bigger node view because most of the output AOVs are represented as nodes. I already did a tutorial on the internal compositing of Octane. You can view that in the upper right corner right now. Now, without further ado, let's jump into the output AOVs. To activate them, let's go to the render settings here, to Octane, and then go to the AOV groups. Small word of caution here, there seems to be something amiss with the terminology. So this AOV groups here represents the output AOVs that Standalone likes to call it this way, while the render AOV groups are basically the old multipass system where we can have different light sources and so on rendered out in a separate pass. Let's create an AOV group from scratch by building an output here and then close that down and go in the node tree for render AOVs here. And this is the one we just created. The other ones are our multipass. If you paid attention, you can see that we also created an output here. This shows nothing due to it's not populated yet. So let's populate it with our beauty by going to the layer, add new layer, and then choose the beauty. And we can see that worked. Now we have the beauty in our output here. What we did in the older tutorial that was just linked above was we brought in render layers and then mixed them together with the beauty or with other render layers. What we are looking into right now is to bring in effects such as close, glares, and chromatic aberration. And this is very easy. We just have to go to the composite node, add layer, and there you can see all the effects that are available in the new Octane version. So for example, let's add a vignette first. So let's go there and edit, and you can see the vignette is active in the layer 2 now. So when we click on the vignette, we have these settings for that. So we can basically just adjust the brightness of it and then also enable and disable it. This is also a feature that came in with the new Octane version. And of course, the fun doesn't end here, so we can layer on top of that as well. So when we go to our layer here again, we can add, for example, chromatic aberration. So let's do this, and we can see that yes, it worked. So obviously the stack order is important here too. So we are going from our beauty to add a vignette and then a chromatic aberration. So for example, if you have a Lensflare and want chromatic aberration on it, you would put the chromatic aberration at the topmost layer. So let's go with the chromatic aberration here and let's set the value a little bit lower, for example 0.1. And there is a small quirk here again. So it adds 2 zeros to every input I do. So instead of 0.1, we need to go with a value of 10 to get 0.1 in here. Probably this can be fixed too. Now, if you paid attention, you could see that we already have our post effects somehow merged in here. And there's actually a setting for that to get rid of them. Now, this is a UI thing once more. So if you go to the render output that gives us our beauty, you can see that we have the enable post-processing here, but this doesn't do anything. So we actually have to go into our composite AOV and turn it off there to get rid of it. So now that we got rid of it, we can add our own effects here. So when we go to add layer, for example, let's add a bloom here again. So we have now our own bloom in which we can choose the strength and the spread and all sorts of things. And this is independent on what we get with our post output. Small interlude to the developers. I really like if there was the same functionality in here as we have in our post-processing. So for example, I would really love a cutoff that allows us to only glow the lighter parts of the scene, and in other channels to have the same possibilities that we have here. For example, to solo the bloom so we don't have the background scene here. Now, for all of you, what I noticed is that this is just a strength slider of the bloom effect. So if we slide it up to 1, basically what we get is just the bloom. So you can see that if I go really high here with the spread start, we just get a blurred output. And basically this can be used in compositing to get this back together with our original scene. So basically what we have here is just the bloom of a chromatic aberrated, if that word exists, image that has a little bit of vignette. So there seems to be a difference how the post effect of bloom or glare is working in the post, which is added to the overall picture, while this here is the bloom itself. So when we go down with the strength, it just blends the bloom with the picture and doesn't add it. So this is very important to know. One other thing that was really essential and wasn't possible in the old Octane output AOVs is color grading. So actually dialing in color values. So this is also now possible. So if we hit the layer one more time here, you can see that we have hue adjust, contrast, brightness, and so on. Also, this is a really nice one, as I always like to tinker around with curves. There is a custom curve here. So let's do this and let's find out what it's doing. So here we have our curve, and now we can adjust contrast, for example, brightness, and so on. And the really cool thing is that this is a HDR curve. So right now we are manipulating image details from 0 to 1, meaning just the display range, but we can go higher here. So we can go to 5, for example, and now we are dealing with a lot higher value range here, and we can add points for this value range too. But let's go back and let's go to 1 here again. Somehow there's an update issue, and this is not without bugs, so I noticed quite a few of them here. Now, what I really like with curves, besides doing contrast, is giving the image a tint, and you can do that here too. So there's a drop down here, and you can set it to, for example, represent RGB channels. So for example, if we go to our red channel here, this is the red secondary curve, we can add a point here and then move it down. Also, what we can do is go to those points and make them a spline, for example, to have even more control over the image. Not sure if that's sampled in here, it doesn't look that way, but you can see that we now shifted the tonality of our image a little. So of course we can then go to our blue channel and increase the blue amount. So you have a lot more cooler image than before. And of course you can always see the before and after, what you did there. And this is a really, really awesome addition to the Octane compositing system, as now it's becoming more and more useful to actually do stuff there. I'm guessing you already have understood the system, so let's show you one more thing here before we turn to another topic. And this is, we are basing everything on the beauty right now, but actually what Octane allows us is to draw from any channel that is available to the AOV system. So for example, what we could do is go to the light outputs and go with the ambient light here. Now, the ambient light is very weak, so we don't get a lot of bloom basically, but if we up the strength, you can see that also works. And this comes out through the output 1 now. So we can dial in our specific needs for every channel, for every light, and put it out to what we need. Because we are not limited to just one output. We can have multiple outputs that are mixed in different ways. So if we just want the light source itself to have a bloom, we just could use the according light path. I think it was number 3. Yes, it was. So we get a bloom just on the light, and everything else will be without bloom if we want that. Also, if we are not certain on the strength of a glare versus a glow, we can just split them up in different outputs. Let's do this real quick actually. So we have a glare layer right now and a bloom layer right now. So we can both use them in comp, then decide how much of every one of those we want. I reverted back, just outputting the beauty through a composite AOV to show you the next thing, which is pretty handy for a lot of you, I guess. So maybe you have spotted it before, but if we add a layer, now we can convert to SDR displays. This is the OpenColor ACES to sRGB tone mapping or interpretation. So if we do that, now everything looks too dark, and this is because we are looking through a OpenColor Rec 709 right now. So if I go back here, and then we need to turn off the camera image's own tone mapping here too. So now we have untinted view of our sRGB tone mapping here. And this is very good if you want to tone map parts of your render already. Also, speaking about Rec. 709, so the tone mapping here gives us a rather dark look right now. And maybe we want to go with a bit of a lighter contrast, which offers the Rec. 709 conversion. So what we need to do is, instead of using the convert to sRGB, we can remove the layer and add a OpenColor.io display transform. So we can choose what we want to transform to, for example, the Rec. 709. So we have the same look as before as we looked through the Rec. 709 here, but this is now tone mapped and the output here is looking like the output in the live viewer when you save it out. I know understanding color science can be a little bit tricky and it took me years to get my head around it. But if you try out the versions that you can get out here, I'm sure you manage to get the output the way you want to. And this is everything I'm going to show inside of Cinema 4D. Now we will jump into the Standalone for the first time also. Welcome to Standalone. So this is Standalone. I exported the scene from Cinema 4D. Now when you click the render target, it will begin preparing the render. Again, word of caution, this might take a while. Sorry for making the materials overcomplicated. I'm a nerd, maybe I need material therapy. So this is a very huge node tree, since this is a larger scene. So I already brought those nodes here, which resemble the AOVs and the internal compositing, so the output AOVs, in the middle. Those were just on the rim here. Now, what you can see when you look closely is that we have different symbols. So we have those orange-gray ones, and we have those layered just gray ones. And those just gray ones are the old passes or the old ways to composite. Now, they can be mixed with each other, as you can see here, but you get the most powerful output if you use just purely the new nodes. And since Cinema 4D doesn't have them, I wanted to show you this in the Standalone real quick. To show you the system a little bit, I try to get a clean Lensflare pass. As we noted before, the Lensflares always, or the passes always come with the beauty included. And we don't want that. So what I'm going to do is add a beauty, and then add a Lensflare, and then subtract a beauty again. So let's do this by deleting all the nodes here above there, and then go with what we have here. So first of all, we want to add the beauty back. So right click and then go to Output AOVs and then go to Render AOV. And in the Render AOV, there's the beauty already set and we have access to all the other channels. So if we add that in, we get our beauty. Now next, again, right click, Render AOVs, and then, Output AOVs. This is the new system. And then what we want to do is go for a Lensflare. It's out of frame sadly, but trust me, it is there. So let's add the Lensflare here. We could even add a other effect before that, but let's make the Lensflare a little bit stronger so we can see, yes, it's turning up here. And we can just adjust how we want to see it. Let's make it a little bit more obvious so that we can clearly identify it. So basically what we can do now is go with the same beauty here and pipe it into the next slot. Of course, this will get our beauty to be revoked, or the Lensflare to be revoked, because it's overwritten by the beauty again. But what we can do in the node below here is go to the layer 3 input here and then set the blend mode from normal to subtract. And now you can see we are getting just the Lensflare. Now if the display here is a little bit too sharp for you and you wish to blur it out, no problem, we can right click once more, go to the output AOVs, and then somewhere there is a blur. Trust me, it's there. As you can see, it popped up here. And then we can blur our result here a little bit, something like that. And this gives us now a output. And if we wish to save it as EXR, it is providing all the necessary color range and the all necessary brightness range to use our comp program to comp that in over our actual beauty. Now we can do that all in here too, but I'm not going to make this any longer than it needs to be. This should just provide you with an initial spark of how powerful the system is and what you can do with it. And hopefully those nodes will come to Cinema 4D, so this gives you even more powerful compositing capabilities inside of Cinema 4D then. And that's already it for this week. I hope you have learned something and you enjoyed this video. I don't know if we made it under 20 minutes, you can see it on the timeline, but I have to still edit this video yet. Again, if you want to own the scene and all the objects inside of there, almost all of them meticulously SDS modeled, so you can use it in other projects if you want. You may join my amazing Patreons that are giving me the opportunity to make videos such like this. Especially my €50 tier subscribers, Shields, Augustinen, and Leon Studio TV, which have actually released an amazing short film. Link is down in the description below. Please watch that. It's made with Octane and it's really gorgeous. Also, a huge thanks for my €15 tier subscribers, AB Studio, Alexander Stevanovic, Anton, Bavana, BVR, Christian Krajewski, Computer Generated, Eduardo Vigniette, Etienne Schmidt, George Luna, Harish Pavaskar, Jakob Fung, Joy Ciccoline, Just a Frickin', Chris Clemson, Ludger, Marty Kane, Part 1 of 2, Kork Andang, Raiko, Render King aka Alessandro Bonchio, Reshock, Rory H, Scene CGI, Shamus Johnson, Terry Wayne Ranson, Yasin Rupp, and Shibue Chang. Thank you all so very much for your support and making me look a little bit more optimistic into the future, making this my main source of income. If you're still with me, if you're still listening and watching, thank you so very much for staying with me that long. Let's post a magnifying glass emoticon in the comments for a lens where glare and bloom is formed usually, and lens flares obviously, and also for the magnifying glass that's found in my scene file. And with that, I wish you a great week, the best of times, and happy layering. Bye.